welcome to the Collector RC. Alright, so we got the Ryft out today. We're going to get the Ryft out today. But first, so we'll do a little bit of driving, but first I want to talk about a couple things. Things that I've done, and then just a little bit of information about the Ryft and why it's taken this long to put it back on the video. So originally, the first thing, you know, if you follow the Ryft series or followed our Ryft videos, we went from unboxing, we got to play with it. I think we got it about a week earlier than most, when it came to, you know, like the everyday person. And, you know, for a full solid week, we ran the crap out of this thing, bashed it, crawled it, ran it through snow, ran it up in the mountains. I didn't have any problems with it. Didn't even know anything about the whole axle issues or any of the connection issues, anything. None of that stuff was out yet. And then I wanted to do a video of me going up, you know, kind of a cool little hill that's very, very, very local to me. And during that video, ran up to the top, ended up hitting a little sand, like a soft sand area on the top with a little, like, kind of a wall. And it broke the axle, snapped the axle. So we talked about it. To be honest, I was very disappointed, upset with Axial for, you know, putting out a product like that. And I'm not sure what the ultimate resolve was. There's been multiple mention of different things, but nobody's gotten any. It doesn't seem that Axial themselves has actually given out any clarification on what they've done. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't. If you have a direct source to Axial themselves, that a link or something that they've talked about or they've described what happened, please go ahead and share it in the comments. But if not, I mean, I haven't seen any of it yet. So I've heard people talking in forums and that kind of stuff, but nothing direct. There's certain things of, you know, there was too much glass compound in the mixture of their plastic, which created it to made it more brittle. Then there was supposed to be a version 2 that when they created them, but nobody's been able to figure out a way to decipher if that's the part they're getting when you buy or get a new replacement part, if it's been changed. So anyway, we got two different replacement parts. One that we went ahead and installed, and before we installed it, I wanted to try my own experiment, basically, kind of my own just an engineering thought, and we can kind of see here the JB Weld plastic, and so far it's been very successful. I mean, I've done way worse things to this thing on 4S, crashing, all that sorts of stuff, and it has yet to break since we've done that. Now, could that be the version 2? Maybe, but we have no idea of deciphering through UPC numbers or anything to know if that is an actual, you know, changed or fixed axle replacement part. So the other things we've done, you can see here that now there's a sway bar. It is not the branded sway bar for this vehicle. It is actually off of a Bomber. I believe it's the front sway bar off a Bomber. I heard the name through another YouTube. I don't remember the YouTube channel or the person who said it. I just heard someone mention this, looked it up, went ahead and ordered it, completely blinded, didn't even know if it was actually going to work. Then when I got it, I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So I had to basically kind of re-engineer how I put this on. But ultimately it did work. It did require me to do a little bit of a kind of a weld or solder. I used a solder technique, but if you can tack, or, you know, if you have a way of welding, that kind of stuff, you probably want to do that. It comes with 2 different bars, and they're too thin and not long enough to fit in the back. So I put them together like this, sistered them, and then adhered them so they can't spin, you know, separately. And then after that, put some heat shrink around it, and I mean, it's perfect, and it's contributed quite well. One of the other changes we've done as well is we have some big bore style shocks in the back. Now, if you do the big bore shocks in the rear, you won't be able to put the dual shocks. It's too big. But it's kind of, the way I looked at it is kind of doing the same thing. Yeah, it's different. It's not the 2 different locations that you have here that you kind of would help with the torque twisting, but it's got a 35 weight in there compared to what I think the 20 weight that was in here. And and it's an overall just bigger, more, it's got a stiffer spring on it, so it already kind of just takes the place of using two, just with the exception of the locations. And then you have with the sway bar too to kind of help us counter. And so far together, they're doing excellent. And then you have, you know, with your gyro and everything in the front, I mean, that's what that's for. So if you're trying to control its chaos, remember, these things were designed, I know. They were supposed to be a lot of things, and they kind of failed on a lot of things too. But here's the thing. One of the things they haven't done, it's designed to look chaotic with control. Remember that. So when it's doing all this crazy, you see that back end just flying all around. Look at that front end. Do you see how hard it's working to do this? It really does. I mean, that's the reason why we haven't gone crazy with upgrades, because when we haven't had an electronic issue, sometimes it's a little slow when it's set up, but if you let it sit for a second, or sometimes it's kind of a shut off, it does eventually connect. We notice though, it has way more issues with the 4S battery than it does the 3S battery. So that is something to look at. So maybe the 4S is just a little too much for its ultimate design, you know, but we continue to keep putting the 4S. Right now it's a 3S in there, but we continue to keep running the 4S as much as possible because it's just a freaking blast. Excuse me. So a couple of other things too. We did some testing, and there's a general kind of rule of thumb with most RCs. You got to be really careful with adding weight, because every time you add weight, it needs to be countered. The weight you add needs to be countered. You can't rely on the motor, ES, and the power system to pick up the difference of that weight that you're adding on. Even though that they could be souped up to, you can upgrade the motors yourself, that kind of stuff. But that's kind of the point we're going to get to, is because there's certain areas you can upgrade that don't lead it, that aren't going to weaken other areas. So like putting a differential, you know, cover on isn't going to make you require to have a metal axle to then ultimately require, you know, to go down a line. And if some of you seasoned enthusiasts in the RC world, you know what I'm talking about. So when you start to begin to upgrade certain parts, well, then you put stress on other parts now that weren't designed to take the stress before. So then you have to upgrade that part. And then after that, it goes down the chain, and then down the chain, and then down the chain. And ultimately you, especially with the Ryft, you find yourself spending $1,000 in upgraded parts. There's nothing wrong with that, to each their own. But that's what that leads into, and that's why we are very much patient when it comes to a lot of our RCs. You saw that with the 24s, that we are very kind of slow in how our process goes with it, because not only are we're not just throwing it on because that car looked good on video, or that I saw that car looks cool because that's the way it's doing it. We really want to know we want to have an understanding of why is it doing better? Is there alternatives to doing that? Now, what's the best way to spend my money to get to that point and yet still not have things that are going to, you know, what we call the tweaker build, where you're kind of touching it too much. There's too much you're doing, so you have a lot more breaking points. We don't want to do any of that. So that's why we go slow with our builds. And that's why you're not seeing like the Bittabons. We don't have any of the metal or the Trio axle stuff yet. So far, this thing's running great as is. With the minor things that we're learning with, you know, breaking a rod link, which is an easy fix. It's cheap, and you buy a bag of them. Then you have a handful of them. We haven't had any bent rod issues, but these rods, I mean, you got to do some serious stuff to bend these rods. We have had issues with the plastic here, and so far my little fix on the other side, which you can't see right now, I can't really spin this in enough room. This car's huge, by the way. But we've done, we duct tape fixes everything, but we actually have steel rods that are on each side of these, and then it's adhered through some metal clamps, and then duct tape to kind of protect it from any more hits. And it ended up bending, and it looks like we are going to end up ultimately having the same issue here. You can kind of see a bend starting to form. I don't know if you can see that from up there. So we'll end up having to do the same thing here as well. I don't know why. What on earth thought that, you know, well, I mean, it's a company thing. They're like, well, yeah, we're gonna put plastic parts on there because then they'll have to spend more money on us to get more of them, right? It's just the way companies do things. But we'll end up fixing that as well. So far, our own little engineering fixes are are paying off. I mean, they don't cost us anything to do. I mean, yeah, I gotta spend a little money to buy the JB Weld plastic stuff, whatever, but doing the actual work and, you know, putting the metal rods, we already had some mini axles for toys that were, you know, that we took apart, duct tape, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, oh, one more thing. We also, I don't know if any of you experienced this yet, but these, the screws that sit back here that hold your guys in, your whole plastic setup in here, they just tore right through the plastic, both of them, one by one, and so this thing was just flailing around all crazy. So we had to put washers to get that hold better, and they'll probably do it again. This is gonna go quick. I don't even think it'll handle the sun. I think the summer will be a big test on a lot of this plastic stuff. So we'll see. But all right, let's get to driving. We're gonna go on the hill, the hill that ultimately put in motion all the different fixes. What originally broke the axle on here. I can't go away. We're not going to let that hill beat this guy. So this guy's going to go back and return, and we're going to beat it this time. So let's get out there and do some driving. GoPro.